So here's the thing. I love comic books, or rather, I loved comic books. It's kind of hard to say considering that I haven't really sat down and read any trade paperbacks in years. When I was a kid, I do remember like going to Barnes & Noble, grabbing some random series and just reading them, like no reading order, no idea what what the universe was gearing up to. No, like I definitely didn't have any clues about the crossovers that had happened and who knew who. It was a mess. And I loved it. But like I said, it's been a while, and most of my comic book content has come from animated series and live-action movies. But after watching Superman in theaters, I felt kind of reinvigorated and wanted to give comics another go. And I know that for DC, the current run is something called The Dawn of DC. But for my research, it actually builds off DC Rebirth and DC Infinite Frontier, so that's where I thought about starting. That's right, despite having to go back to work and being notoriously bad at completing projects, I've set myself up to start reading DC Comics. I'm gonna try and start with DC Rebirth, with the hope of getting to the Dawn of DC and restoring my comic book nerd credentials. Ironically though, despite being a dive into DC Comics, the reading order I found for Rebirth was from a website called Marvel Guides. I'll leave a link in the description if anyone wants to check it out and let me know if it's a good list to follow, but it seems pretty detailed, and in case you were wondering, I'm also going to be reading through Comixology because ordering each issue is way out of my price range, but according to the reading order, the first thing I had to read was DC Universe Rebirth number 1 from 2016, and now that I have, I think it's time for us to talk about it. Okay, so the reason I chose to start with Rebirth is because it's considered to be a neat entry point into this series, and for the most part, I think that's true, but because I guess this is just like a comic book thing, whenever the universe is reset, it has to be explained, so that's pretty much what this first issue, DC Universe Rebirth 1, is literally all about. The comic itself is about 80 pages and does its absolute best to lay the groundwork out for the rest of this new universe, what's already happened and what has been redone. And I have to admit, as someone who knows the broad strokes of New 52 and stories like Flashpoints, it was still kind of overwhelming. But one thing I will say off bat is that the art was stunning. Gary Frank, Ethan Van Sciver, Ivan Reis, Phil Jimenez, all of them come together to draw this massive undertaking, and despite it being the work of so many artists, the comic itself felt extremely cohesive. I know in anime sometimes when new art teams take over projects, it can feel jarring, but these guys nailed it, and just props to them for it, because it's just crazy that they were able to do this so symbiotically. The running theme of this storyline seems to be about relationships, primarily the loss and, wait for it, rebirth of them, and as you can probably imagine, that's a pretty emotionally heavy topic, and these artists portray emotions in the face of the character and the mood of the panels really well, especially in the differences of characters like our introduction to Batman and the way he feels way more moody in tone than, say, the section with Ray Palmer and Jaime Reyes, and I found that impressive through a comic book medium. I guess before I go on, though, I should probably state what's going on in the story itself, and well, this comic centers around Wally West, and truth be told, I know a few things about Wally West which made me excited. First, I know that he is the Flash in the Justice League cartoon I watched growing up, and in this iteration, he's still in his Kid Flash form. Second is that he was my second favorite character in the Young Justice show when that was still good. And third is that he always seems to be getting stuck in the Speed Force, and it seems that's exactly the situation he found himself in again, as he is the catalyst for this reset from the New 52 continuity. The problem Wally is facing this time is that nobody seems to remember who he was. Something seems to have happened to him back in the New 52 continuity, which, if you want to tell me, please do so in the comment section below. And he's been lost to the Speed Force, watching the world forget him, and he's desperately trying to come back. To do that, he needs to find an anchor, someone who still remembers him and can drag him out of the Speed Force, and it's this part of the story is pretty heartbreaking because he starts with logical decisions, like Batman assuming him to be one of the smartest people in the world and that he can crack this mystery. And when that doesn't work, he tries to go to his lover, Linda Park, only to find out that that will fail because he doesn't even remember who he is. And then he tries his best friends, the Titans, with each of them failing, leading him closer and closer into giving up until he finally comes across Barry, who fails to remember him until Wally West gives this really heartfelt thank you to him, for giving him such an amazing life, which triggers something in Barry, and he remembers Kid Flash and pulls him out of the Speed Force. It was super sweet. And what I liked the most about these moments, though, was that Wally seemed to be being used as this metaphor for the New 52 run in general, at least according to what I've been reading online. The recurring feeling of him being invisible, from what I understand, is supposed to be like this way of alluding to the way legacy characters were treated in the previous continuity, and how the run seemed to strip away existing relationships and history and love within that universe. And this issue is supposed to be Barry and Wally coming together to bring those aspects back in this run in Rebirth. And if that's true, I'm extremely excited by that, because my experience with the New 52 universe came only from the Injustice games, and honestly, I hated that story after learning that Damian Wayne killed Dick Grayson, who is my favorite superhero of all time. And just on a side note, I'm so excited to see his Rebirth issue, because I have a feeling they're going to slap. But back on track, it's definitely safe to say that Geoff Johns, the writer of this issue, was not being subtle at all with his disappointment with the previous comic run. A lot of the times, this comic seems to be straight up telling you, yeah, we know that the New 52 universe lost a lot of its heart and we're bringing it back. Characters in this 80-page spread talk a lot about the missing connections, the timelines being tampered with, and love literally being stolen from their reality. And it feels a little dramatic and a bit convoluted and bloated, sure, but it doesn't feel cheap. It feels like DC, or at least Geoff Johns, is really trying to treat Rebirth as a way of fixing the DC universe, and because I'm reading this after its completion, it's going to be really exciting to get to see if it worked. Now, when I was talking about it being a bit overwhelming, I think by nature of what this issue was trying to do, there was no way of avoiding it, but it's still worth mentioning. There are character references to people like Johnny Thunder, Pandora, Saturn Girl, and the Justice Society, and there's even a tease to the Watchmen, because like apparently that crossover happened or is happening, which kind of gives me an idea of who's behind all this universe meddling in the story, because Wally tells Barry that not everything that happened in this continuity was his fault from Flashpoint. But I'll have to wait and see if my hunch is correct. Really, I don't have any evidence to go off. But really, that's kind of all I have to say about Rebirth #1. I feel like most of the story analysis can only really come from reading the following issues. But as like a slate cleaner, I think it did a pretty serviceable job. It feels to me like this run's like mission statement is basically saying that like we remember what made these characters special, we remember when comic books were fun and not depressing slogs, and we are going to try our best to honor that again. And I really hope they live up to the promise with this run. And for someone like me who's just getting back into comic books after years away, I'm really excited to like get back into reading them. Let me know if you're interested in seeing me read some of these stories live on stream. I'd definitely be interested in doing that. And again, do me a huge favor and check out the reading order recommended in the description, and let me know either in the comic section or over on Twitter of this, like if this reading order checks out, because next on the list for me seems to be the Flash Rebirth #1, and I think that means we're going to get to see some like Wally West, Barry Allen team ups, and that's super exciting. So I'm going to get right on that. But if you want to follow my journey through Rebirth, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and follow me on Twitter and possibly Twitch, depending on which platform I feel allows me to stream read-throughs best, if you want them. And with that, guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and until next time, peace.